Okay, so I'm all ready to go, right?
You are ready
Okay.
to rock and roll. Yes.
Okay, well, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Debe Branning, and I am the director of the MVD Ghostchasers. We're a paranormal team that's been around since 1994, so that's getting close to 30 years, about 28 years now. We've been investigating ghosts, and I'm also an author of 6 paranormal books. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to kind of go over each and every book and give you some information on a haunted place in each one, something that might interest you. So I'm going to start with my very first book. I'm going to hold it up so you can see it. It is called Sleeping with Ghosts. It's probably showing backwards, but it's called Sleeping with Ghosts. And that one's about Arizona's haunted hotels and bed and breakfasts. This was my very, very first book that I ever written. And I want to say that you're never too old to write a book. I was 50 when I wrote this book. So, and it's been around now for the last, well, since 2003, something like that. So it's been very, very popular. And it is my biggest seller, believe it or not, after all this time. Even though ghost hunting has changed over the years, it's still very popular. And I like to go to hotels when I travel. That's what I do. I go to a haunted hotel, I eat at haunted restaurants, I go to spooky graveyards, and anything else in between. So when I was doing Sleeping with Ghosts, my very, very favorite hotels is the Gadsden Hotel in Douglas, Arizona. I'm sure some of you have been there. Also have gone to all the ones in Jerome and Prescott, Flagstaff, everywhere else. But at that time, the hotel down in Douglas, the Gadsden, was my very, very favorite. We would go down there with my people from my work. When you wonder what does MVD Ghostchasers stand for, I worked for the motor vehicle department for 25 years. And so on weekends, our crew, to have a change in scenery, we would get together and we would go to haunted places. And that's how my team was formed all those years ago. And some of them still go places with me still today. Now, when we would go down to Douglas, sometimes we'd have, oh gosh, 3 or 4 carloads of us going down there, and we'd stay at the hotel down at the Gadsden. Pretty much they'd give us the second floor every time because we were going so often. I think they just wanted to contain us in one area. That's my guess. But while we were there, we started speaking with spirits on the Ouija board, which I do believe is a good ghost tool as any of the other that you see on TV now these days. But when we were talking, we got speaking to a little boy named Naza. That's the name he gave us. And every time we would go down to Douglas and stay at the hotel, we'd bring him little treats or little toys. And I remember one time we brought him some candy corn. It must have been around Easter time. And we brought him candy corn. And he never ate it, never took it, left it around the secret hiding place. We'd always hide things for him. So when we talked to him on the board later, we said, did you not like the candy corn? You can't chew when you're a spirit. You know what it is. And he just, left us a message. He goes, nope, I just hate it. It tastes bad. And so that was our story of Naza, the little ghost boy that always, gave us all our information about the hotel. Another time we were sitting there and we were, playing with the board again. Now, this is my favorite story about the Gadsden because it has a connection with Pancho Villa, the famous Mexican bandit. And he actually used to sneak into the hotel at times and have a drink in the saloon back in the 19 teens and the early 1920s. And so we had all of us in one room one night. We were doing the board again, kind of having a little seance. And it came back that it was Pancho Villa on the board. And this one gentleman that we worked with, he was, I don't believe in any of this stuff. And so he says, okay, I'm going to ask it a question. I'm going to ask it, if because you girls are, I've seen my sister play with Ouija boards and you guys are just moving the board around. So I'm going to ask it a question. What was Pancho Villa's wife's name? And it came back Maria. And he goes, well, that could be anything. There are so many Marias. He goes, I'm going to ask it a question. And only Pancho Villa would know because every cowboy had a special name for their horse. I'm going to ask it, and I'm going to ask it in Spanish. And he asked, what was his favorite horse's name. And it came back on the Ouija board. All it came back was SHT. And you know what we thought? Horseshit. And so we thought, well, I don't know what this means, it has no clue. So we went back to work, told our supervisor all the craziness that happened that weekend. And he says, well, I have a friend who is a professor in San Francisco on, Spanish and history. I'm going to ask him. I'll ask him what, his horse's name was. So we waited a couple of days and we came back to work again. And our supervisor says, well, girls, I think you really did have Pancho Villa on your spirit board that night, because Pancho Villa's favorite horse was 7 leagues. And when you sound it out phonetically, it's Sahete or SHT. So that is our encounter with Pancho Villa down in Arizona at Douglas at the Gadsden Hotel. And I have a bunch of stories all about, different cities that have experiences with the ghosts there. And it's always been a fun, but like I said, a fun book. This one still sells the most of all my books. And I gotta tell you too, I know you guys, a lot of your writers, and it's kind of cool to get these books and hear the true ghost stories. And so then you can kind of use what happens when you're on a ghost hunt in your own, fictional stories as well. Now, the next book I'm going to talk about is another one that I really love, because I love cemeteries. And this one's probably, again, backwards, but it's The Graveyard Shift. Now, this one I did because I love stories of old cemeteries, whether it be their history or if something quirky happened in the cemetery as well. So in my cemetery book, my favorite story, I'm going to answer this question before I go on to the cemetery. Someone asked if I've ever encountered demons. No, that's just on TV. Sorry. Spooky things, they have to make it spooky on TV or no one would watch the show. So they create all these, spooky things and make it more that it's a horrible demon. I am very careful when I do my ghost hunting as well. I always wear protection. I'll have on a crystal, or I wear onyx, or I'm just very careful how I speak to spirits and where I am. And if I do feel like it's not a comfortable feeling, we just get out. We don't stay and antagonize them. So that's the answer on that question. Back to the cemetery now. We used to do a thing every year called Cemetery Crawl, which is really a lot of fun, because I always wanted to be on The Amazing Race, but I felt like I could never do it because I couldn't bungee jump, or, they'd have me swim in some, deep waters or some other crazy water thing. So I thought, I'm going to invent my own race. So I developed Cemetery Crawl. And what we did, instead of going to 5 continents and 12 countries and seeking out things, we went to 5 counties in Arizona and maybe 12 or so cemeteries. And what they do, when they got to the cemetery, they would have a clue. They'd have to walk around the cemetery and find a specific tombstone. They would take a picture of it, bring it back to the line here, and they would look and make sure you had the right stone, give you the next envelope, and off you would go to the next cemetery. Along the way, you got to stop at a bunch of historical locations. It was really a lot of fun. We did it for about 10 years.
You have a question, Debbie.
Yes.
Have you ever encountered truly evil spirit demons? And if so, how did that go?
No, I answered that just shortly. And no, we've never encountered demons, because we are very careful.
Okay.
And like I told them earlier, it's mostly something that happens on TV because it's TV.
My apologies.
It does happen occasionally, but we are very careful in what we do, and we've done the research, and we're very well protected as well. So yeah, and so back to my cemetery story. We were up near Wickenburg in the old cemetery near there. And we were waiting for all the guests to arrive. We were way up north. And let me tell you what cemetery was here. I'm going to pop over here one second. And it's up north and we were waiting for the teams to arrive. There were three of us, and it was starting to rain. So I got kind of worried because we had to make it up to Prescott by nighttime. So I'm like, these guys got to get moving, get checked in, or it's going to snow and we're going to have problems. So we're watching, and there's like 2 cemeteries there where we were. And one cemetery we could see up above the hill. There were people walking around in there. So I told the 2 guys I was with, I think they went the wrong cemetery. So I'll wait here in case any other teams arrive. You guys go up there, drive around and send them this way. So I'm waiting and waiting, and I see the guys up in the truck. They're up there driving through the cemetery very, very slow, like they're looking, and pretty soon they came back. Still nobody was at my cemetery. So I was like, what is going on? So I said, well, did you send those people down here? And they go, Deb, there was nobody there, nobody at all. We drove around, there were no tire tracks, there was no footprints, nothing. And I said, well, we all saw it. And they went like, yep. And I go, well, I think we saw ghosts walking around in the cemetery. And that would happen a few times when we did cemetery crawl. I don't know if they wanted to play the game with us or what, but it was really kind of fun. We had another time, and it was near Wickenburg again. Well, this time they were supposed to find Henry Wickenburg's grave in the little cemetery he's in. And all they could do is get the clue from the guy at the little train depot museum, and then they were off. And as they were driving around, they were all getting lost because it's a tough one to find if you've ever been up there. And finally, one of the girls was there as they were driving around, looked over, and they said, well, there's a man over there, and he's pointing up the hill. He's pointing that way. So they turned around, went back, and the little man was gone. And they went up there and they found the grave. And then the girl started looking in her clue things, and they saw the ghost of Henry Wickenburg pointing up to his grave. So sometimes cemeteries can be interesting as far as, meeting the people that, are buried there. I also volunteer at the Old Phoenix Cemetery, the Pioneer Cemetery downtown, and I'm on the board of directors there, and I also do preservation there. And I'm not saying the place is haunted, but some interesting things happen there too. The cemetery is not only a historic cemetery, it's also built over an old CoKoCon burial ground at one end. So it's a double whammy. You've got historic pioneers from early Phoenix, and you've got historic pioneers. So one day I was out cleaning the cemetery, with my little bag of trash and picking up papers that flew around. And I was at one grave site, and I looked down and I could see a piece of Indian pottery, which do show up there. And you never take anything from a cemetery home. But I wanted to take it inside the little, our offices, our little house, so I could show everybody what a pretty piece it was. So I took it in there and I left it, for them to look at. And I went back outside again to pick up more garbage. And as I was leaning over one of the iron fences, something pushed me and I started falling forward. And the only thing I could think was I was going to be impaled on a piece of iron, and I'm going to be on the news. Cemetery lady falls in cemetery, gets, impaled. But I fell between a crack where a piece was broken off, and I thought, thank goodness. So I immediately went back inside, got that little piece of pottery, and said, I'm taking it back out. And I reburied it in the cemetery. And that's what we do when we do preservation. If we find any Indian relic, we rebury it back in the ground where it goes. So cemeteries can be a lot of fun. And this book covers cemeteries all around Arizona as well. As far as, Flagstaff down, in Tombstone, out, the western end, Kingman, everywhere. So this one is a really cool book if you like old cemeteries and spirits that do pop up now and then. And, always remember when you are out there in cemeteries, you got to be respectful to the dead, and you don't take anything at all. So that's some of the stories I can tell you about Graveyard Shift, which is a really kind of fun book too. Now, the next book I did was, I'm going to move this one over a minute, Grand Canyon Ghost Stories. Now, this one was a lot of fun because there was no book about ghosts of the Grand Canyon. There are books about people falling off, which happens, on a regular basis up there. And there's all kinds of books about, when they did the explorations of the summit of the Grand Canyon, but there was none about the ghosts. So I got this assignment from a publisher in Montana, and because he does a lot of the national monument type locations. And I said, okay, I can do this. So then I started looking things and I couldn't find anything. So I had to get my little group of girls, and we spent a whole 3-day weekend starting up on the east, rim of the Grand Canyon. We went over to the south end and over to part of the west end. We didn't go up north, but we went to every little trading post, every little shop, every restaurant to get these stories. And believe it or not, the Grand Canyon had amazing stories about their ghosts. And if you go in, to the canyon and you start going to all the locations, they'll start talking to you about it. They're kind of hesitant at first, but then they'll say, well, yeah, in our little shop here, we'll come in the morning and, all of the sales items are going to be scrambled or put in a different location. Of course, over some of the locations, the shop owners will see some of the people that were all involved in the Grand Canyon back in the day. I'm going to open up the book real quick here to grab some of them. Like the heart of the canyon, there's a wall along the Grand Overlook, and there's a stone in there in shape of a heart. Well, we learned that when they were building that wall, that one of the gentlemen was having a little love affair with one of the ladies at the hotel. And so, she was one of the Harvey girls, and they were not allowed to associate with other people because that was their job. They signed a contract. They were going to work for 6 months or so, maybe a year. So they weren't allowed to have any, relationships. So this gentleman, that had this little secret little thing going on with this little gal, put this heart, says a rock, into the wall. So when she would look out the window, she would see that he left her a special surprise as a reminder. Now we go over to another part of where the let's see, we're gonna go down here a little bit here. There were UFOs in the Grand Canyon. And that was amazing because I put things out there, and then pretty soon I'd have the mule runners and the raft guides and different people messaging me their ghost stories. And one that I remember really, really good was one of the raft runners, and he said he had a lady that was on the tour with him, and she was very, very New York, had never been outdoors at all, but she wanted to make this raft run. And so he was kind of hesitant at first, but he could see that she really, really was going to give it a shot. So one night after they had been on the rafts all day, and they would pull over at night and set up camp and have the dinner and everything, and they all had laid down in their sleeping bags. And she woke up, I guess, during the night and witnessed an old time raft come to their camp. And she says 2 men got out of the raft. They were all dressed like old miners. And they were in one of those old-fashioned rafts that kind of looked like the Flatirons of the day. And they got out, started walking up the shore. And she said, can I help you? And they kind of got startled. They stepped back, and they went back into the raft and continued. And so the next day she was, very confused. And so she talked to, their leader of their group. And he says, why didn't you wake me up? She goes, well, I was startled, and I think I startled them too. And he asked her for the description, and she said they were in really weird type old-fashioned rafts. And he said, they show up every once in a while. There's, a couple of rafters that had perished in the water. He says, because we don't run those kind of rafts anymore at all. And he says, and besides, as a raft runner, as a boss of this, we know everybody who's on the river that day. And there was nobody like that here. So that was another interesting story, learning, from the raft runners. The mule runners, they had stories about, their old, mules that they would see on the side after, they know they had perished a long time ago. It was just a really fun thing learning all these stories about the different Grand Canyon things you never thought of. I had some of the, what do we call them, the rangers send me stories that they had witnessed things on the trails, people passing them by and there's like nobody there. Amazing. So this is a fun book if you're going up to the Grand Canyon and you're just going there to relax and you want to sit there and read a book while you're, or you're camping or at the hotel. This one's been fun too. Now I'm going to go back here to a general Arizona one. This was what fun is called Dining with the Dead, which I really love doing, but I think I gained like 10 pounds doing this book, because when you go to these restaurants to learn the stories, suddenly you're having dinner. And that's what always happened. My friends and I would go out and get the stories and we'd be sitting there eating, and before you know it, 10 pounds got on that one. But this is a guide to Arizona's haunted restaurants and cafes. So a lot of people say when they go on vacations, they take along Sleeping with Ghosts so they know where to sleep. They take along Dining with the Dead so they know where to dine. And they have the graveyard shift so they know where to visit all the dead people. But I'm going to tell you, Dining with the Dead was really kind of fun. And I'll pick out one that I really like here. Hang on. I'm going to go to, all right. Let's go over to the Spaghetti Factory. That's always been one of my favorites. Now, the Spaghetti Factory, they have them in a lot of towns, especially they like to put them in old warehouses, old buildings that were there. Like this one is built is in two houses that they had combined together to make a furniture store. And then when the furniture store moved out, then Spaghetti Factory took over and they built their restaurant there. Now, back when I was writing the book, I was doing a lot of research, and I kept seeing people writing about how two police officers had went there for dinner one night. And while they were having dinner, they heard a horrible scream, and they checked the whole building out, and they told the owners, don't ever let anybody go upstairs. So I couldn't figure out what's going on with that. And then there was stories how one of the people that lived in one of the homes had died in front of their fireplace. And there was always, screaming coming from the basement, all kinds of really crazy stuff. So about 10 years ago, I was doing some investigations for Arizona Central.com. They were very into the ghost thing. So they would send my team along with the psychic medium, and they would put us in a location. The medium would go in first and do her little readings of things, and then they would let us come in, and we would go and take pictures and recordings and see what we would come up with. So one night they let us go and do the Spaghetti Factory, which they hardly let anybody do investigations there. And we were able to go inside the old part of the upstairs where all the horrible stuff is noted, and stories were noted. And we always go in the basement where they had always heard the screaming and, crazy things down there. So we had our one tech guy in the basement, and I was upstairs most of the night, looking, upstairs and walking around. I remember tripping over some wires, and we did get a recording of a child saying mama or mommy. And when we were all done, when we were wrapping up, I took the recorder, and I said, well, I hope that we got something, for the AZ Central for their website and everything. And when the recording came back, you heard, you already did. And then of course our gentleman that was the tech guy, he had gotten a few things as well. And so it was quite a busy place. So when I was doing my book, I wanted to, check and see if I could find the police officers that were involved in that, because I thought, well, that's going to be a great story. And they contacted me. and they invited me to come there and have lunch with them. And they're going to tell me the story of what they saw that night. And I'm calling on my friends and I'm telling them, I've got the story of the year. This, I'm going to find out what they really saw. They've never told anybody before. And this is going to be a big hit. So here I go, and I meet them for lunch. And I'm so excited. I've got a pen, paper, pad. I'm ready to go, hear the story. And so they were telling me about, the night they had come there for dinner. And they said they sat down in a table near where the trolley car is. So you know where that is in the restaurant. And they said, we ordered our dinner. The waitress just took our order and she was getting ready to walk away. And we heard this horrible scream coming from the basement. He says, well, being police officers, we have to investigate. So they went and they went to their cars. They got their flashlights. They went upstairs, walked around. They went downstairs and they found all the chairs stacked in a big pyramid. So the manager thought that was really, really weird. So then I'm sitting there and they go, what? And I go, what did you see upstairs that was so horrific that it's been on the internet forever? Don't ever let anybody go up there. And they go, well, Deb, you were there, right? I go, yeah. And you walked around upstairs? And I go, mm-hmm. He says, and you noticed that the stairs were all rickety and the carpeting was torn and there were wires hanging all over the place. And I went, yeah. And they go, well, that's what we meant. Don't let anybody go upstairs. It's too dangerous. So that, oh man, my bubble was burst then. But that's one of my favorite restaurants that has really vast ghostly activity in Phoenix. And you go in there, they won't let you go upstairs, but check out that hallway where the restrooms are. There have been people seen in that hallway as well. So that's some of the stories. There's 52 restaurants in here. So that means you can go to a haunted restaurant every week and have an experience with the ghost someplace in Arizona. Now, last year I did a book that was called, let me grab it here out of my pile, Haunted Phoenix. Now that one was kind of fun to do because I didn't have to travel far. I could go around and visit all my favorite spots in Phoenix. So we have, I'm going to pull up my chapters here. So we have places like the state capitol, which they do have a ghost that wanders in there. The YMCA, that's downtown. They have a headless spirit there that apparently his head was decapitated. So they see him wander there. And they have the Pueblo Grande ruins, of course, have the Native American spirits. We have, in the warehouse district, we have the old Union Station, which has their ghost that wanders around in there, Fred the Ghost. And I had experience with Fred, sort of. I was speaking at Scottsdale Community College, and they were talking about ghosts. And so when I was getting ready to leave, the professor asked me if I ever had the chance to go into the train depot. And I said, no, they won't let anybody in unless you have an appointment. And they said, with, big time, they won't let you go and ghost hunt. And he says, well, we got to go because of school. We were doing a thing on communication, and they had since we did communications and that they had some stuff in there for communications, they let us come in. And he says, so we were doing a tour and we were getting ready to leave, and the girls all had to use the restroom, as girls do. They all went together. And while they were in the restroom, the gentlemen were all out talking, and they heard all the girls screaming, and they were like, oh my gosh, what's going on in there? So they all dashed down there, and the girls came out and said, there was, we walked in here and there was a man standing right here. And then we turned around and he was gone. And we thought he ran out. And they go, no, we didn't see any man there. And so then, the guy who was like the security going, yeah, that was just That was just Fred the ghost. That's what he likes to do. He just likes to play pranks. So that's kind of a really kind of cool place. I'd love to get in there someday to see just who Fred is. Was he a worker and back in the day at the train depot? We don't know who he is, but he's kind of protective of the place.
Debbie,
Yes.
you have questions.
Yes.
Jen asks if you know about the Hayden Ranch Cemetery on 18th Street and Broadway.
18th Street and Broadway. I don't know if I've ever been in that one. It sounds familiar. I think I have friends have been there, but I have not been in that cemetery. No.
Okay. And she'd never heard about the Spaghetti Company ghost, which I hadn't either. And she was born here in 64, and she has ghost stories too.
Good. I know. I wish we were all together where we could really talk about it. But if she has a question or wants to share a story, you want to pop her on, she can tell her story. I don't know if you can do that or not in the way you're doing it, but
well, do you want her to unmute?
Yeah, have her unmute.
Jen, you can unmute. Oh, this is Max. I'm sorry, it's her husband. Max is disguised as Jen. Okay. Okay. I was thinking the year was a little off. So Max, if you want to unmute yourself. Can you unmute yourself?
I know it's tricky.
I didn't think I had that locked down, but maybe we'll see.
Maybe.
He's trying. So if he can't, I'll see if I can.
Okay.
There, try it now. Here you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Here I am. This is Jen.
In disguise.
Yeah, so there's a cemetery back behind. They just built a new warehouse on the south side of Broadway and 18th Street, I think.
Uh-huh.
There are no headstones left, but you can see that where there used to be like a fence, chicken wire fence around it. It's all been trampled down. It's in a really.
Is that the Sahatala herd? Does it go by that as well?
Is it? Maybe that's it. Maybe it's a herd.
Yeah, the herd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. So you know about it?
I know about it a little bit, but you had an experience there or by there?
Well, I've been there a couple of times. And during the day, I just wanted to go see if I could map it out and see what was going on there. Like I said, it has a trampled down chicken wire fence around it, and there are some cement. Looks like bases. Maybe there was a headstone on it at one time, but it's all gone.
Yeah. I think most of the stones have been taken out of there, and they are going to do something to preserve it. They are going to. They're working on ways to get a new wall up around it, just so they can kind of preserve what's still there.
That's great to hear, because I had no idea what was gonna happen. When I saw them building that building,
get rid of it or anything. They're just still working on getting funds so they can reconstruct a new wall around it again.
Fantastic.
They'll keep what's inside of there, because a lot of it was moved to other cemeteries, but everybody's still in there. This is like stones got stolen and everything back in the day, so that's why they're trying to get a new wall up to keep it, the rest of it preserved.
I read that all the graves are marked somewhere. Everyone record of who's in which grave is still there.
I think they have the record of them, but they're just not all marked. But there is records of them probably on Find a Grave, and I know the Pioneer Cemetery where I volunteer. They are working on that project as well.
Right on. Okay, well that's what I have.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. It's great.
All right. Back to Haunted Phoenix. Does anybody, if you want to poke a question down there about any haunted locations that you might know about, I'm going to tell you a couple of them here. This one was kind of fun to do because I got to go around and talk to a lot of people about Phoenix. So we talked about the train depot. I'm trying to find another one that I really like here too. Well, of course, everyone knows about the Orpheum Theater, right? The Orpheum Theater downtown's beautiful inside, and they do have a group of ghosts there. And one of them that I always like the story about is my one friend Cindy. She, we all like hats. We all like pretty hats, and she likes to, have a really nice hat too. So she was there with a bunch of her friends. They went to a play, and it was intermission time, and she was heading to the restroom. And on the way, she saw kind of a lady standing towards the back, and the lady had on, you know, kind of a period looking dress, and she had a big Hell Dolly hat on. So she thought, well, I'm going to go ask her where she got her hat, because we're always doing reenactment things, and so she might have a good, you know, outlet. So she went up to the lady to ask her, and just as she was opening her mouth, the lady disappeared. Well, that's the ghost they call Maddie or Maggie, depending on who's speaking. And they see her up in the balcony of the theater quite often. She sits by herself, or sometimes they see her in the back of the theater, like where my friend saw her. And so we don't know where Maddie came from or whereabouts, but we kind of think she might have been one of the relatives of the owner. And therefore she had a pretty steady access to going there and seeing all the you know, big features of the day. So that's why she's always there. She's always dressed nice. And so that's, you know, one of the most popular spirits there. They also hear spirits on the stage, as if there was a big fight going on, and it's not in any of the plays. There was just, you know, a backstage hand or someone, and they, you know, are fighting with somebody. They've never been able to figure that out, but they hear that on the stage quite often. There's a ballerina who kind of dances across the stage during some performances, of which my friends have seen. I was sitting there with them, and they're both sitting there pointing. Do you see the girl going across stage? Of course, I don't always see ghosts, but I have a lot of friends that do. So that's another popular one. And then when I was doing my book, I learned my own ghost story. And that's about how when children are there taking tours and they look up on the top, up on the rafters, sometimes they see a little tuxedo cat. So I actually was, you know, looking for stories in the old newspapers, and I found a story where when they were building the theater, there was a little tuxedo cat that was hanging around, you know, the construction. So the construction guys, you know, started to feeding it part of their sandwiches. And so the cat would come around every day. So they believe that this is the same cat. His name is Tom. And they actually see him up there every once in a while during performances. So he's always kind of one of the, you know, favorite stories they like to tell. And that's why the children still see him, because I guess he must have more than 9 lives after all this time. But that's another favorite story about the Orpheum. And let me grab you another one here. I'm trying to find some, I'm just kind of picking out some of my favorite ones here that have always been kind of really kind of cool. And, you know, there are kind of like underground mysteries in Phoenix people don't know about. Like there was the underground bowling alley, which is still kind of there in pieces. There was a synagogue that had a tunnel that, you know, was like an escape route. It's still there. There's even a bat cave for you Batman lovers that's up there up north of Scottsdale, and you can watch the bats fly out. Also, there are little fairy tale castles such as Torbrea Castle, you know, the wedding cake house or birthday cake house, whichever way you want to talk about it. They don't like to talk about that it is haunted, but you know, sometimes you just have to kind of talk to the little docents that work there, and they're the ones that see everything, and they're the ones that spilled the beans. So
you got a question?
Yes.
First, you've gotten some kudos that this is a great panel, and they've agreed with that. Max wanted to know, where is the bowling alley?
The bowling alley is across the street from the Westward Ho. If you go across the street from Westward Ho, you're going to see that's a sidewalk, and you're going to see a sidewalk with like little glass windows on top of it. And those were the windows that went down into the bowling alley, so they'd have light, you know, the daytime light. You can't get into it anymore. It's pretty much all gone, but some people have gotten photographs a while back, and you can kind of still see where the lanes were. But it was across the street from the Westward Ho, and you used to be able to get into it through the tunnels, but now the light rail goes through there, and they took out all the tunnels. So it's kind of almost impossible to get to where the bowling alley was now, but you can still see the lighting where it was at one time. It was what was that bowling alley called here? It was.
He said he was there before it burned out back in the 80s.
Yeah, the gold spot. Yeah, probably. Yeah, back in there, you could still get through it, through the tunnels, because was a parking lot there, and that's where the people from Westward Ho, with the workers, like the restaurant workers and everybody, would park, and they would come through the tunnels underground to the basement of the Westward Ho to go to work, because you weren't allowed to come in the main doors. Any other question?
He just said it was a ruin back then too.
Oh, was it? Yeah, yeah. It was pretty old, I think. Uh-huh. Yep. But it's not. Yeah, that's not used anymore. Let's see, where else. I was going to tell you about Tovia Castle and the Mystery Castle on South Mountain. Many of you have probably toured there, and it was kind of cool. And we did an investigation there way back when Mary Lou was still alive, and she told us about having Dobermans when she lived there by herself, and she needed them for protection. But eventually they got, elderly and passed on. But she had other guests come to visit, and they would say, we tried to visit you one night, but I don't know if you were home or not, but your Dobermans ran down to the gate and wouldn't let us in for anything. And she says, my Dobermans have been gone for 10 years, but their spirits must be still protecting the house. So a lot of times, there are a lot of animal spirits that still protect us as we go in life too. So that was kind of a cool place. And she also said that her father was a spirit that she had seen in the house too. So that was kind of a unique thing, being able to take a tour with her, the woman who experienced everything from back in the day when they built the castle. Her father built the castle for her when he had TB, and then when he passed, and her mother moved there. But she has passed away too in the last 5 or 6 years as well. So that was really, really kind of a neat little place. But there's, tons of places in this book. You can go all around. It's a greater Phoenix area. I would say more central Phoenix.
I have never gotten to Tovery, and I'm born and bred here.
Yeah.
But I always heard,
they're going to tell you it's not haunted, but it is.
Well, I always heard tales when I was a kid that the owners had died in the living room or something like that, and that you could still see their ghosts there. I was raised with stories on that.
Right. She did not pass there. She actually she was robbed and I don't know if she was beaten, and then she went outside to signal the caretaker who was down the property a bit, and she was out. It was a rainy night, it was cold, and she actually got pneumonia. She was quite elderly. She actually died from that, not the beating or anything like that. So she did not die there, but she did go after the robbers and fired a gun in the ceiling. You can still see the bullet hole in the ceiling. But
interesting.
Yeah, but her spirit is still there. Now, like I said, they're going to tell you no, but yes, her spirit's still there. She loved that place. That was just a really, her favorite place in the whole wide world. So that's why her spirit is still there. It's not that she passed away. But then I know other people have told me that, when they were teenagers, they would drive there, and she'd come out with a shotgun to the gate and fire the gun in the air too, because she didn't want trespassers. So it was really kind of it's a cool place to take a tour and learn about, Arizona history too.
A few comments here. Max said his mom used to do Mary Lou's hair.
Ah, yeah.
And Bill states that, there's some YouTube videos on the bowling alley, the gold spot.
Yeah, there is some YouTube of it. Yeah. You can still, like I said, up until recently, people would stick, cameras down in those little holes and try to get pictures, but it's pretty dark down there now. So it's, basically, I think you can see something that says lane or something on it, or, foul line or something. It's really not much to see these days. It's pretty well collapsed and deteriorated.
And Max also mentioned on the Tovery, he said, me and Jen helped with getting it ready before it opened to the public. Phil Tovery gave us a tour upstairs.
Yeah, I know. And I had another gentleman that was on the construction, and he said that, they would clean up every day, really good when they were done. But they would come back sometimes, and they would find barefoot prints of like a little child that had, walked around in the house. So they'd find these like footprints of a child walking through there. And I know the Tovrias had small children that had passed away. In fact, we have 1 or 2 of them buried in our cemetery.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
He
it's
said he'd
very
heard about that, but
advertising.
he'd never saw that.
Yeah. One of the workers that was there told me that story. So yeah, so it's kind of cool how some of our old buildings like that are so busy. Now I'm going to tell you about my latest book, and this one's just hot off the press. In fact, I just got them in the mail. They still smell like fresh ink. Was a great book I just did this last year during the pandemic. So this one is very, very special to me because I would take 4 of my really good friends, and we would go out, and we started like last May, and we'd go out and do a weekend. We did it in 4 different pieces. So we started out in the west and we made our way all the way to the east. But we would go out for the whole weekend and visit all the haunted locations along Route 66. Go home. We'd wait like another 6 weeks, make sure everybody was still healthy and there was nothing else crazy going on. We'd go out another weekend, and then we'd go wait another 6 weeks. So we finished it like the end of October, visiting all the places in Arizona's haunted Route 66. So this one was, very, very special because we were brave and we were careful, and we, kind of told ourselves that, we're still going to be able to do things, even though, with this crazy pandemic things, we just have to do it right, and you have to do it carefully. So with this book coming out, was very, 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 very cool. Now, we did get to, in a few places, do impromptu ghost investigations. And one of the places we were at was in Holbrook. And no, actually it was Winslow. It was in Winslow at the Bojo's Diner. I don't know if anyone's ever eaten there. It's right along the Route 66. And about 12 years ago, I did a paranormal investigation there. And while we were there, they showed us that there was tunnels underneath the building that went out to the streets. Because even then, if there were Chinese workers, they couldn't be on the street after dark, so they would use all this tunnel system underneath the street so they could get to their businesses and to their homes. And so they were showing us where these tunnels were. So when we were there last fall, I started telling my little crew, like, okay, there's tunnels underneath here, and there was an opening over here in the bar. And so we went over there. Of course, they got new tile, the opening is covered up. So I started asking the staff, and they're like, they had no clue what I was talking about. So they called the owner and said, there's a crazy lady here that says you got tunnels underneath here, and there's a passageway, and there's, you can get into, from the stairs. And he says, oh yeah, he says, there's a trap door. He says, but you have to go through the kitchen to get to it. So we went, oh, okay. And then he goes, well, do you want to go? And we're like, yeah. So here we are, impromptu little ghost hunt, going through the kitchen, down these rickety stairs, walking through the dark area where these tunnels were. And then it got to a point where it was this really, really bad. So, the 2 agile ones went down there, and I says, keep looking up in the air, look for the trap door. And sure enough, they go, we found it. And they took a picture, and that was like way cool to be down there again. Where all, the people were. And I know that the guy who went down last time, he said he went so far, but then he started getting nervous because it was just dark. And he says, I was going to take a wrong turn. I don't know where I would have ended up. But there are tunnels underneath Winslow. And another time we stayed at a really old 60s Route 66 motel. And we started doing a little impromptu, talking outside, and we got, certain names came up. There were children that showed up, but then I learned that there were some little kids that were living there at the motel back in the day, and they were killed in one of the Route 66 car accidents. And then there was also a woman who ran a beauty parlor there. And that was a name that kept coming up, that was speaking to us, out there when we were sitting outside talking about the place. We also did the Apache Death Caves. We hiked there, and of course, our little sprinty little agile went down into the cave, but we didn't have, you almost need a gun with you because we need to shoot off rattlesnakes. or bats, whatever down there, because it's really, really festive. So she just got to the front area and took some pictures. But you can feel the energy there. It's really, really intense. So that was another really kind of impromptu thing we did. But we did that all along the way. We get to places and they'd go, oh, well, do you want to like look for the ghosts? And we're like, well, of course, that's why we're here. So I was able to get some really, really great stories along the way. And that one was really, really fun to do, because they didn't have a book about the ghosts of Route 66 in detail. So we kind of went into detail on a lot of it and experienced a lot of cool things. So I think I have about, looks like about 8 minutes left. So if anybody else has questions about locations, I'd be really, really happy to answer them. And I hope next year that we can do this in real life and I can sit there with you and answer all your questions and sign some books for you. You can always go to my Facebook page, which is just Debe Branning, Branning. And I have books at my house all the time that I can get for you too. So anybody else have questions?
If you're on the Discord channel, there is a promote me server or channel that you can go and add all your details in.
Okay.
If anybody needs to ask questions, you can you can tell me in the text and I can unmute you guys so that you can
yeah. Well, I hope you guys learned a little bit about Arizona's history today, because I always say, history and mystery go hand in hand. So if you have to have a ghost story, you have to study the history to find out who that ghost might be. Just like when I was interested about the ghost in the the restaurant, you have to find all the details. You can't just go there assuming there's a ghost there. You have to actually do the study and the history and try to find out who the ghost might be. So hopefully that's helpful. And then if you are writers and you do your ghost stories, study the facts. Make sure if you're doing a history one that you have facts on it, or if you're trying to figure out how you would investigate on that, watch things and see how ghost hunters do it. Was there a question?
Well, Vanna said, great panel, highlighting stories from some of your books. Thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you, Vanna. Vanna got a sneak preview of the Route 66 book. So she kind of edited parts of it for me. So,
oh, awesome.
So she got a sneak preview on that one.
Yeah, I still haven't gotten a chance to do any of your cemetery stuff that I want to go do with.
Yeah. We're going to be having tea again in February, so I'll be watching for that. We'll have a little tea out there in the garden area of the patio area of the cemetery. So you're out there by all the graves, but you're actually on a big patio, and it's hats and high tea. So you get to wear your favorite hat and dress up and have tea with us, and it all goes to the preservation for helping save the grave markers and tombstones that we have out there as much as we can. And we'll have our preservationist out there helping us again in February. So that's always a lot of fun. And who knows, sometimes you run into interesting things when we're out there fixing those stones.
Nice.
Anybody else have a question? Holler. I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, we're 4 minutes. We're 4 minutes to go.
No, you don't want to miss out on that. So like I said, this one's brand new. It doesn't even come out on Amazon till the 13th. I do have, like I said, a box of them here. They just came the other day. And it's just, when you get a new box of books, I know everybody that is a writer knows this. It's like birthing a baby. You can hardly, wait, it's delivered. And then you're like, you count the pages. It weighed this much and had this many pages. And it's really, really exciting thing at all. Like I always tell everybody, it's like birthing a baby when you hold it the first time. And, it's like, it's a book. It's a book. Instead of it's a boy, it's a girl, it's a book. So yeah, I'm working on one right now. It's going to be Haunted Globe. If everyone knows where Globe, Arizona is, that one's just in the beginning process, and I just finished one. It's called School Spirits, and it's the last lessons learned, and it's about all the haunted schools and universities of Arizona. So that one will probably be out, maybe I'll say late next spring, maybe summer, and Haunted Globe will be like next fall again. So that's what's coming up in all my work. So right.
Well,
I hope everybody enjoyed it. and like I said, learn something today, and then get out there and look for the ghosts, or come on down to the cemetery and you know, do some work with us there. We always have little workshops and fundraisers going on down there, and they have open house there too, so you can walk around on your own.
Yep. And Bill says thank you, it was fun. Vanna said good preview too, and like I said, it's if we can get Debbie back onto Discord to go to the Promote Me channel, if she hasn't already, she can put her details in there too, so you guys can find her.
Otherwise, you can just, you know, like plug in my name in Facebook or Google. It's all over in Google.
That is true. She is easy to find.
Yeah, easy to find. And I always answer questions, so not a problem.